Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Lord Premanande Hari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtatara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktisidanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Guru Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktisidanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kundara Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Madhavan Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All glories assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories assembled
Hare Krishna.
All glories assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories Shri Guru Shri
All
Gaura.
glories to Shri.
All glories Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Sarasvati. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So tomorrow is the auspicious day of the appearance of His Divine Grace, Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati Prabhupada.
明天是Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati Prabhupada 的吉祥的显现日。
So first we want to speak something about the glories of Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati.
首先，我们讲一讲关于Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 的荣耀。
Of course, he is the spiritual grandfather of the disciples of Bhaktisidanta Swami Prabhupada.
当然了，对于 Bhaktisidanta Swami Prabhupada 的门徒来讲，他是灵性的父亲。
He was the founder of the Gaudiya Math mission.
他是高迪亚玛使命的创办人。
And Srila Prabhupada took initiation, our own Srila Prabhupada took initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada.
而我们的Srila Prabhupada，我们的Bhaktisidanta Swami Srila Prabhupada 是从Srila Bhaktisidanta Saraswati Prabhupada 那里接受的启迪。
So we can understand he must be a very, very great personality.
因此，我们可以明白到，他一定是一个非常非常伟大的人物。
Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was born in a very pious, very religious family.
实际上 ，Bhaktisidanta Saraswati 他出生在一个非常虔诚、非常有宗教心的家庭。
His own seminal father was a very great Vaishnava preacher named, and who is in our line of disciplic succession and known as Bhaktisidanta Thakur.
他自己的父亲是我们的使徒传承之中一位非常著名的传播者，他的名字叫Srila Bhaktisidanta Thakur。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta Thakur was the pioneer of Krishna consciousness in the Western world, and he also pioneered a lot in India.
Srila Bhaktisidanta Thakur 是在西方世界传播 Krishna 知觉的先驱，而且在印度也是一位这样的先驱。
It was very difficult for him to try to establish the position of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
当时很难，就是他确立主Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 的使命。
So he prayed that he could have children who would help him to establish Lord Chaitanya's mission.
他祈祷能够得到一个孩子，能够帮助他确立主宰他那的使命。
And he had 11 children.
他有11个孩子。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati was the fourth. He was the fourth son of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 他是 Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur 的第4个儿子。
And he was born into such a nice family atmosphere that his father, at the time of his birth, his father was the magistrate in the Jagannath Puri temple, and he was overseeing all the affairs of the temple.
当时他就出生在这样一个氛围良好的家庭之中，他的父亲是加格纳普瑞庙的一个执行官，当时在就是照顾所有加格纳特庙的这些事务。
And we can see the birthplace of Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati. The birthplace is there on the main road as you come from the Jagannath Puri temple, as you go towards the Gundicha temple on the main road. You can see there's a Gaudiya Math temple there now. It was at that place where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur resided.
我们可以看到 Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 他的出生地，从加格纳特庙出来，在去贡地场的路上，在这个主路的旁边有一个高地玛特的庙，那里呢就是原来Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur 他居住的地方。
So Srila Prabhupada taught us that the birthplace of the spiritual master is important, and we've purchased also the birthplace of our own Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in Calcutta.
Srila Prabhupada 教导我们灵性导师的出生地是非常重要的。现在呢，我们也把在加尔各答的Srila Prabhupada的出生地买了下来。
Next time you go to Calcutta, try to go there and see the birthplace of Srila Prabhupada.
下一次你们去加尔各答的时候，要努力的到那儿去看一看Srila Prabhupada的出生地。
And try to see also the place which is also established at Uttadanga Junction Road.
而且还要努力的去看一看Uttadanga的那个地方，在Uttadanga的交接点的这个路上。
Because it was there that Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati first met with Bhaktivedanta Swami.
因为就是在那里Bhaktisiddhanta 第一次见了我们的 Bhaktivedanta Swami。
And it was 100 years ago this year that they met, and it was 100 years ago when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave the instruction to our Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada that he should preach Krishna, the message of Lord Chaitanya.
就在100年之前，是他们第一次见面的时候，就在100年之前，在这个地方，是了 Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati 给我们的 Bhaktivedanta Swami 训示，他应该在西方英语传播主 Chaitanya 的讯息。
So tomorrow there's a big program there in Calcutta at number 1 Uttadanga Road.
明天就在加尔各答的乌特当格路1号会有一个很大的节目。
And many senior devotees have come to attend the program.
很多资深的奉献者都会去参加那个节目。
I think that's why Indrajumna Swami is leaving today.
我想这是为什么因为因为斯瓦米今天走了，他要去加尔各答参加那个节目。
Because it's a very historic program.
这是一个历史性的节目。
Exactly 100 years ago this year that he got the order.
今年正好是100周年纪念，他得到了这个训示。
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was known as Bimal Prasad at his birth.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati 出生的时候，他的名字叫做 Bimal Prasad。
And at the time of his birth, it's described that when he came from the womb of the mother, the umbilical cord from the mother was wrapped around his neck like a Brahmana thread.
据说在他出生的时候，他的脐带就像一根 Brahmana 的圣线一样绕在他的脖颈上。
So that was an auspicious sign that this child is a very good potential to help to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya.
这是一个吉祥的标志，意味着这个孩子将会帮助大家努力的传播主Chaitanya的讯息。
Nowadays, if the child comes out with the cord round his neck like that, we'll think, oh, quick, cut this, oh, you'll strangle him. You know, they don't appreciate that this is auspicious.
现在如果要是一个孩子出生的时候发生脐腰镜的现象，大家就会很着急，赶快把它剪断。他们并不认为这是一个吉祥的事情。
So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was when he was just 6 months old, the chariot came past their home because it's right there on the main road on the way from the temple to the Gundicha temple, and the chariots came by, and at one point the chariot of Jagannath stopped just outside their home. So the mother came out and brought the child onto the chariot and placed the child at the feet of Jagannath.
包基斯丹在只有6个月大的时候，正好赶上弹车节。当时呢，加格纳特弹车从庙里出来，因为他们家就在从庙到红地车的路上。然后当时弹车就停在了他们家门口，他的妈妈把包基斯丹抱出来，抱到了弹车上，放在了主加格纳特的莲花足下。
And when the child was at the feet of Lord Jagannath, at that time a garland fell off Lord Jagannath onto the child.
当这个孩子在主加格纳特莲花足下的时候，从主加格纳特身上掉下了一串花环，正好落在这个孩子身上。
So it was another auspicious omen that this is a very special child.
这是另外一个吉祥的标志，就意味着这是一个很特殊的孩子。
And when he was a few years old, his father had brought some mangoes home for offering to the deity. But Bimal Prasad is a young boy, and he saw the mangoes, and he likes mangoes, so he began to eat the mangoes. Do you like mangoes? Yeah?
当时他是一个小孩的时候，他的爸爸有一天回家买了一些芒果，然后因为他是一个小孩，他很喜欢芒果，所以古鲁玛哈拉就问前面这小娃娃：“你喜欢芒果吗？”他点头说是的。
So Bhaktisidanta, the little boy, began to eat the mangoes, and when father came home, he saw the child was eating the mangoes. He told the child, he said, "Oh, they have not been offered yet. You have to wait till they're offered before you eat them."
这个小娃娃很喜欢芒果，所以他就开始吃。然后Bhaktisidanta Thakur看见了之后，就跟他说：“哦，这些芒果还没有供奉过呢，你只有在等他们供奉过了之后才可以吃。”
And so from that time on, although he was just a young child, he would never eat mangoes. He would say, "No, I cannot take. I am an offender."
从那个时候开始，他一辈子再没有吃过芒果，因为虽然他很小，但是他说我不能吃芒果，因为我是一个冒犯者。
And throughout his life, he didn't eat mangoes. Whenever people would bring mangoes, he would say, "I cannot take. I am an offender."
终其一生，他再也没有吃过芒果了。只要有人给他供奉芒果，他就说我不能吃，因为我是一个冒犯者。
So this is an example of his control of the senses and his determination.
这便是他对于控制感官的决心。
And as a young man, he was a student at college, and he formed a society with other young men, and he had them all take vows of celibacy.
他年轻的时候在大学里上学，然后他就组织了一个协会，让所有其他的年轻人一起加入他，保持贞守。
But in course of time, every other man in that group, every other man, they all got married, except for him.
但是随着时间的流逝，他们这个团队之中，所有其他的人都结婚了，只有他例外。
He was the only one. He maintained throughout his life the vow of brahmacharya.
他是唯一的一个终其一生保持着 brahmacharya 的誓言。
And so as a young man, he never bothered much about studies, but he was always good in everything.
他年轻的时候从来没有为学习的事烦过心，但是在所有的方面他都非常的优秀。
The college, the different places where he studied, they'd give work to do. He would never read it. He would never do it. But he could always do it, whatever was required.
大学里如果无论布置什么作业的话，他其实不做，但是呢，他总是可以取得非常好的成绩，达到需要的这个标准。
And he went on to become a very brilliant astrologer.
而且他成为了一位非常出色的占星师。
And he was known as a walking encyclopedia. He could talk on any subject.
他被称为是一部走动的百科全书，对于任何的题旨，他都可以滔滔不绝。
At the age of 31, he took a vow to chant the holy name 1 billion times.
31岁的时候，他发了一个誓言，要唱诵圣名10亿遍。
And in order to fulfill that vow, he had to chant every day 192 rounds.
为了完成这个誓言，每一天他要念诵192圈。
And it would take him 9 years to complete the vow.
他花了9年的时间才完成这个誓言。
And he completed the vow.
他完成了这个誓言。
So and he was living here in Mayapur. He was living at the yoga peeth there, and there was a straw hut, a grass roof hut. He was living.
他就住在马也普这里，搭了一个小茅用草盖的房子。
But because he had to chant 192 rounds every day, he didn't have time to take care of the house.
因为他没有时间，就是他每天要念诵192圈，没有时间照顾他的房子。
And sometimes the roof would leak because it's a grass roof.
有的时候他的房顶就会漏雨，因为他的房顶是用草做的。
And so you have to constantly put new straw, new grass in there to protect the roof, to cover the roof.
你应该不断的往上添新的草、新的稻草来保护这个屋顶。
But he didn't do it because he's so busy chanting every day.
但他没有做，是因为每一天他都忙着念诵。
So when it would rain, he would just sit with an umbrella over his head.
所以只要下雨的话，他就举着一把伞坐在伞底下。
And in this way he would finish his chanting.
这样他可以完成他的念诵。
So he was always the secretary and the assistant to his own father, Bhaktisidanta Thakur, who was a great preacher.
对于他的父亲 Bhaktisidanta Thakur 来讲，他一直是他的秘书和一个助理，因为他的父亲是一个伟大的传播者。
Srila Bhaktisidanta Thakur wrote many books and many Vaishnava songs, and it was Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati who was his secretary, who was his assistant.
是了 Bhaktisidanta Thakur 写了很多的书，创作了很多的歌曲，而是了 Bhaktisidanta 是他的助理，是他的秘书。
And whenever Bhaktisidanta Thakur would go traveling, Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati would go with them.
每当 Bhaktisidanta Thakur 需要旅行的时候 ，Bhaktisidanta 就会跟他一起。
So Bhaktisidanta Thakur was always preaching what is the real mood of a Vaishnava and who is a Vaishnava.
Bhaktisidanta Thakur 一直在传播到底 Vaishnava 的这种情感是什么，谁是一个真正的 Vaishnava。
So it created some controversy. There was opposition to the preachings of Bhaktivedanta.
这样就造成了一些反对的意见，有人去反抗 Bhaktivedanta 所讲的这些。
Not everybody was going to accept everything Bhaktivedanta Thakur said.
不是每一个人都会接受 Bhaktivedanta Thakur 说的。
So Bhaktivedanta Thakur was preaching that anybody, doesn't matter what their birth is, that anybody can become a Vaishnava.
Bhaktivedanta 说，不管一个人的出生是什么样子的，任何人都可以成为一位 Vaishnava。
But there were people called the caste Goswamis who say that no, you have to be born a Brahmana.
但是有一些世袭的Goswami 们，他们说你必须要生下来就是一个 Brahmana。
They said that birth is very important. If you're not born a Brahmana, you cannot just simply become equal to a Brahmana.
他们说出生是很重要的，如果你没有出生在一个 Brahmana 的家庭，你是无法跟那些这样的人相提并论的。
And they said if you're not born in the Brahmana family, then you cannot do the same duties of a Brahmana.
他们说，如果你没有出生在一个 Brahmana 的家庭，你就不能够做 Brahmana 所履行的同样的职责。
Duties of the Brahmana are to do things like worship the deity and worship Shaligram Shila and perform the fire sacrifice.
Brahmana 的职责有崇拜神像、崇拜 Shaligram Shila， 还有举行火祭。
And you cannot become an acharya. Even if you're an uttama adhikari, you cannot become the acharya.
他们说，即使你成为了一位 uttama adhikari， 也不能够成为 acharya。
So it was very controversial because the caste Brahmanas, those people who were born Brahmanas in Brahmana families, they were very attached to their position.
这件事情非常的有争议，是因为那些世袭的 Brahmana 们，他们出生在 Brahmana 的家庭，他们非常重视自己的地位。
But Bhaktivedanta Thakur, he was preaching, no, anybody can become Brahmana.
但是 Bhaktivedanta Thakur 他传播的道理是，任何人都可以成为一位 Brahmana。
Bhaktivedanta Thakur was preaching according to the teachings of Sanatana Goswami.
Bhaktivedanta Thakur 是按照 Sanatana Goswami 的教导来给大家讲的。
And Sanatana Goswami was a direct disciple of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
而 Sanatana Goswami 是主 Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 的直接的门徒。
So at one point there was to be a big meeting
曾经一度大家开了一场大
to
会，
discuss who is a Brahmana and who's a Vaishnava and what's their positions.
大家一起来讨论 Brahmana 到底是什么，然后他们的地位到底是什么。
But at that time, Bhaktisidanta Thakur was sick. He had rheumatism and he was bedridden. He couldn't go.
但是那个时候 Bhaktisidanta Thakur 他生病了，他有风湿，他躺在床上没有办法去。
So at that time, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, he heard and he then wrote an article. And he wrote the article establishing the position of Vaishnavism and what is actually the position of Brahmana and who's a Brahmana and who's a Vaishnava. And he read everything out to Bhaktisidanta Thakur. And when Bhaktisidanta Thakur heard it, he said, oh yes, he said, this is wonderful, very, very good.
Bhaktisiddanta 于是写了一篇文章，其中确立了什么是 Vaishnava 主义，什么是 Brahmana 的地位，然后 Brahmana 应该做些什么 ，Vaishnava 的地位又是什么。写完之后，他读给 Bhaktisidanta Thakur 听 ，Bhaktisidanta 听完了之后说：“哦，非常好，
That you are really Saraswati.
你是真正的 Sarasvati，
You have the blessings.
你得到了祝
Saraswati.
福 ，Sarasvati。”
So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati went to that conference and he debated with all the smarter Brahmins, all these people who were born caste Brahmins, Brahmins by birth. He debated with them.
于是 Bhaktisiddanta Sarasvati 去参加这个大会，跟所有那些 smart Brahmana 们，也就是出生在 Brahmana 家庭之中的世袭的 Brahmana 们进行辩论。
And he established with evidence from all the scriptures that anybody has the right to become a worshipper of Shaligram. Doesn't matter where you're born.
他用来自于所有经典的证据确立了这样一点：任何的人都可以有权利去崇拜 Shalagram， 无论你的出生是什么样子的。
And he also explained to these Brahmanas that actually Kali Yuga, everybody is by birth, Sudra or lower.
他还向所有这些 Brahmana 证明，在 Kali Yuga 每一个人出生其实都是生下来就是 Shudra 或者是更低的阶层。
And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati established the position, what it means to be Brahmana, that it's not just simply birth, but it's by the work and the activities.
Bhaktisiddhanta 于是确立了到底什么构成一个 Brahmana 的地位，并不是说通过出生，而是通过他的活动。
In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, Chaturvanam Ashishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So according to Guna and Karma, Guna means qualities and Karma means work. So if someone's a Brahmana, they have to have the qualities of the Brahmana and have to work like a Brahmana.
巴赫比特之中提到要按照一个人的guna，就是他的品质，还有按照他的 karma， 他的活动，才能够确立他是一位 Brahmana。
So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati totally defeated all the arguments of these smarter Brahmanas.
于是 Bhaktisiddhanta 击败了所有这些 smart Brahmana 的论点，
And he gave the right to everyone that they can worship Shaligram Shila and they can become a Brahmana and wear the Brahman thread.
他把权利给了每一个人，每一个人都有权利去崇拜 Shalagram Shila， 每个人都可以有资格去戴 Brahmana 的圣线。
Some people think that the Brahmana thread is just, it's a symbol, that, oh, they're proud to wear the Brahmana thread.
有的人认为 Brahmana 的圣线只是一种标志，他们戴上圣线就骄傲自大。
So, but actually the Brahmana thread is a sign that you've received the mercy of a spiritual master.
但实际上 Brahmana 圣线的含义是你得到了灵性导师的仁慈。
There are some people, they think, no, I don't need Brahman initiation. I don't want to take Brahman initiation. It's not important. I'm just chant the holy name.
有的人认为，哦，我不需要 Brahmana 的圣线，那是不重要的，我只是唱诵圣名就可以。
That means they don't have faith in the process of initiation.
这就意味着他们对于启迪的程序没有信心，
They're not following the initiation process which is given by the acharyas.
他们并不去追随由 Acharya 们给出的启迪的程序。
The Gayatri mantra is given for people to purify themselves further.
Gayatri mantra 是为了给那些想进一步得到净化的人准备的，
It's a meditation on the Supreme Lord.
他们可以对至尊主进行冥想。
So There are also people, they think that the holy name shouldn't be chanted aloud.
还有一些人认为圣名不能够大声的被唱出来。
In the times of Bhaktisidanta, Sarasvati and Bhaktivinod Thakur, there was one Babaji, and he was preaching to people that we shouldn't chant the holy name of the Lord.
在Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 和Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur 的那个年代，有一个巴巴吉跟大家讲，我们不应该唱诵主的圣
We
名，
shouldn't chant it aloud. We should just chant softly and in the mind.
我们不应该大声的唱诵主的圣名，只能在心意之中轻轻的这样念诵。
And he made up a mantra. He made up his own mantra, and he told everybody, chant this mantra.
而且他编造了自己的 mantra， 他告诉大家，你应该唱诵这个 mantra。
And the mantra was actually full. It was offensive. It was rastabas. It was against the teachings of all rasa.
这个 mantra 实际上充满了冒犯，其中有 rasa basa 的成分，是违背 rasa 的原则的。
So Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, they pointed out the mistakes to this Babaji, but he wouldn't listen.
Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur 和 Srila Bhaktisiddanta 他们指出了这个巴巴吉的错误，但是这个巴巴吉不听他们的，
So he ended up going mad,
最后呢他就疯了，
committed an offense.
因为他做了冒犯。
He was telling people, don't chant the holy name out loud.
他告诉人们不要大声的唱诵圣名。
But Rupa Goswami has already described that Lord Chaitanya chanted the holy name aloud.
但是 Rupa Goswami 描述说，连主Chaitanya都会大声的唱诵圣名。
And Lord Chaitanya, he had directly associated with Lord Chaitanya. Rupa Goswami was a direct associate, a direct disciple of Lord Chaitanya. He'd seen Lord Chaitanya chanting the holy name. He'd heard the holy name from Lord Chaitanya.
而 Rupa Goswami 是主Chaitanya 的一个亲密的朋友，是他的追随者，是他的直接的门徒。他从主Chaitanya那里亲耳听到了主Chaitanya唱诵主的圣名。
So it is authorized in the scriptures that we should chant the holy name loudly.
在这个经典之中也有授权，说我们应该大声的唱诵圣名。
And we see that people like Haridas Thakur and Kulaveka Sridhar, they all chanted the holy name loudly.
我们可以看到 Haridas Thakur 还有 Kolavich Sridhar， 他们都大声的唱诵圣名。
And so Raghunath Goswami has also written in his Manasiksha that we should chant the holy name aloud.
Raghunath Das Goswami 在他的 Manasiksha 之中也写到，我们应该大声的唱诵圣名。
So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, he was preaching against these deviations from the teaching of the Shastra.
Srila Bhaktisiddanta Sarasvati 就在传播这些教导，反对对于经典的违背。
Is this man looking for something?
他是送快递的。
So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had to preach against all these different deviations.
所以 Srila Bhaktisiddanta Sarasvati 他的传播就在反对所有这些偏离。
He had to establish what is actually the process of devotional service.
他要确立奉献服务的真正程序到底是什么。
And there was also objection that he was giving initiation.
还有一
And
些人反
he
对，
would give the sacred thread to people who were not born in higher caste families.
有些人反对，因为他给那些没有出生在高等阶层的人启迪，授予他们圣献。
Usually in the Smarta tradition, that the sacred thread is only given to people in the Brahmin, Kshatriya and Vaishya caste.
通常在传统之中，这个圣献只被授予 Brahmana、Kshatriya 还有 Vaishya 的阶层。
But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was giving sacred thread, he was putting the Brahmin thread on people who were even from lower families, from Sudra family and lower caste.
但是 Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati 把这个圣献带在了那些出生在低等家庭，甚至是疏者的等级的人身上。
So this has always been controversy in the past, even in the time after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there was controversy over this.
那么这个是非常有争议的，即使是在主宰他那马哈普布的时代，这也是非常有争议的一件事情。
There were acharyas like Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur, he was not born in a Brahmana family.
有像纳尔汤达斯塔库这样的先辈acharya们，他并不出生在一个 Brahmana 的家庭，
But he gave initiation to some Brahmanas.
但是他给 Brahmana 们洗涤。
There were two in particular, two famous Brahmanas, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and Ramakrishna Bhattacharya. They both got initiation from Narottam Das Thakur.
有两位非常著名，一个叫 Ganga Narayan 的 Chakravarti， 还有一个叫 Ramakrishna Chakravarti， 他们两个人都是从 Narottam Das Thakur 那里接受的洗涤。
And then also Shamananda Pandit, he was not a Brahmana, but he gave initiation to Rasikananda, who was from a Brahmana family.
而 Shamananda 他自己并不是一个 Brahmana， 可是他启迪了 Rasika， 后者是一个来自于 Brahmana 家庭的人。
So there were objections even at those times. That was just after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared. People were saying, oh, they're not qualified, they're not Brahmanas, how can they give Brahman initiation to these other people?
当时就有这样的争议，那个时候主宰他那刚显现不久，然后人们就会说，他们怎么能够给这样的主宰他，Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared not long or disappeared not long.
He disappeared.
主宰他那马哈帕布他刚刚引进不久，然后人们就在争议说，为什么能有这样的现象？他们怎么能够给这样的人启迪呢？
So there were obstacles, just like Srila Prabhupada also got objections when Prabhupada was giving initiation to people, the people from Western countries, from countries outside India, then it was considered even more objectionable.
所以有这样的争议，就像说帕帕他给一些在印度之外的那些人启迪，然后呢，人们觉得这个更受到争议，更有反对了。
But according to scriptures, it's allowed
但是按照经典，这个是被允许的。
that anybody can become a Brahmana if they're properly initiated and trained by a bona fide spiritual master.
如果一个人受到一个真正的灵性导师的训练和洗涤的话，他是有资格去启迪别人的。
And what is the qualification of the bona fide spiritual master?
而一个真正的灵性导师的资格是什么呢？
That was taught to us from the mouth of Ramananda Rai when he was talking with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
这是由 Ramananda Roy 的口中说出来的。当时他在跟主Chaitanya Mahaprabhu在讨论。
Oh no, actually it was from the mouth of Lord Chaitanya.
其实是来自主Chaitanya 的口中。
Because Ramananda Rai was surprised because Lord Chaitanya was questioning him. He was asking him so many questions. And Ramananda Rai thought, you know, you're the Brahmana, you're the sannyasi, I should be questioning you.
Ramananda Roy 当时非常的惊讶，因为主Chaitanya问了他很多的问题，他就在想，你是一个 Brahmana， 你是一个 sannyasi， 应该是我问你才对。
But Lord Chaitanya said, no. He said, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nasi Sudra Keni Nai Ye Krishna Tadvavetsi Guru Hoy. That anybody who knows the science of Krishna, it doesn't matter where they're born, they may be a Brahmana, they may be a renunciate, they may be a whatever position they're in, they may be Sudra, it doesn't matter, but if they know the science of Krishna, then they can be the spiritual master.
主Chaitanya说，无论一个人出生在什么样的情况之中，即使他是一个 Brahmana， 他可能是一个气绝者，或者是出生在一个术者的家庭之中，只要他能够了解跟 Krishna 有关的科学，他便可以成为一位灵性导师。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati was preaching, and there were many objections to his preaching because he was challenging people that you shouldn't be doing this, that this is wrong, you're doing things wrong.
Srila Bhaktisidanta 他在传播，但是有很多的人在挑战他，说你做的这个是错的。
He didn't like to see people put the deity and just sit there and have people come and give money. They put the deity just to collect money like a business. He did not like that.
他并不喜欢人们把神像放在那儿，然后就利用神像来收钱。
And he didn't like people preaching, giving classes just to get money.
他也不喜欢人们去讲课、去传播，只是为了挣钱的缘故。
He wanted pure devotional service.
他想要的是纯粹的奉献服务。
The preaching of Krishna consciousness is not a business.
传播 Krishna 知觉并不是一个生意。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta pointed out the defects in all of these different processes.
Srila Bhaktisidanta 提出了所有这些程序之中的缺陷。
Of course, he was preaching against impersonalism and voidism, Mayavadi philosophy.
当然了，他的传播也反对非人格主义、虚无主义、Mayavadi 的哲学。
And I was telling you about this one Babaji, that he was such a rascal. He did a thing. He had one man dress up like a gopi.
我讲过这样的一件事情，有一个巴巴姐，他就胡作非为，让一个男人打扮成狗屁的样子。
And he said, now you're Lalita Saki.
然后他说，现在你是 Lalita Saki。
So one minute he was a conditioned soul, and next minute he's become Lalita Saki.
所以在1分钟之内，这个人是一个受局限的灵魂，下1分钟他变成了 Lalita Saki。
Now Lalita Saki is the expansion of Srimati Radharani.
Lalita Saki 是 Srimati Radharani 的扩展。
So how is it possible any conditioned soul can ever become the internal potency of Srimati Radharani?
任何受局限的灵魂怎么可能成为 Srimati Radharani 的内在的力量呢？
And so this was another deviation, another offense in the preaching of Krishna consciousness.
这是在传播 Krishna 知觉过程之中的另外的一个冒犯，一个偏离。
This foolish man, he thought that it's only in Krishna Lila that one can experience ecstatic love for Krishna.
这个人愚蠢地认为，只有在 Krishna Lila 之中，一个人才可以体验到跟 Krishna 之间的这种爱。
But Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati Prabhupada, he pointed out that in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, there is also ecstatic love for Krishna.
但是这个 Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 指出，在主彩贪念的逍遥时光之中，也有对 Krishna 的狂喜
So
之爱。
we want to follow the example of the Goswamis and how they behaved. They didn't take the dress of gopis.
我们想去追随那些 Goswami 们的榜样，他们并没有打扮成 Gopi 们的样子。
But they were in the mood of the gopis. They were following in the footsteps of the gopis.
但是他们是在 Gopi 们的情感之中，他们在追随 Gopi 们的步伐。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati, he was also following in the footsteps of the gopis, of the manjaris in particular.
所以说 Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati 他也在追随 Gopi 们，尤其是 Manjari 们的情感。
And he preached this Krishna consciousness movement very vigorously, very boldly. He wasn't afraid.
他非常有力量，非常勇敢的在传播 Krishna 知觉，他一点也不害怕。
Even though there was plan to have him killed at one point, he was not afraid.
甚至曾经一度有人计划要杀了他，他都一点也不害怕。
Because he was a threat to all of these caste-conscious people, how they wanted to cheat the people with their bogus teachings.
因为他成为这些主张等级制度的人的威胁，他不想让那些人去欺骗其他的人。
So at one point these people had collected a sum of money, a lot of money, and they were ready to give it. They told the policeman, we will give you this money, but we're going to do something to this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But you should not interfere. You should just let us do it.
于是，一度他们收集了很多的钱，然后给了警察，说我们想对这个巴基斯坦的这个人做一些事儿，但是呢，请你们不要干预。
But the policeman, the head of the police who was offered the bribe, he told them, he said, no, I cannot take money in this condition.
但是这个警察的头目，因为大家想去贿赂他，他说在这种情况之下，我不能接受你们的钱。
He said, I cannot allow you to harm a holy person, a saintly person.
他说我不能够允许你们去伤害一个圣人。
The policeman said, yeah. He said, usually we do take bribes. Usually we do. You know, we're in the material world. We have to maintain our lives. So usually people give a bribe, we will take it. But in this case, you want me to take a bribe and I'll let you go and do harm to a holy man, a saintly man? That I cannot do.
警察说呢，其实通常我们是收贿赂的，因为我们身处在这个物质世界，有人给我们就会收，但是在这种情况之下，不能 是因为我们不愿意去伤害一个圣人，一位圣洁的人。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati faced a lot of opposition. One time they were on parikrama here in Navadvip, and they came to the Ghat, and there was a big crowd, a huge big procession, and there was elephant even in the procession, and there was a big crowd of devotees, and they were all coming to go on the boat to cross on the ferry, and there was a gang of people there. They stoned them, they threw stones at them.
所以有一次说到Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati在这个岸边的一个码头，在 Ghat 这里，当时跟他一起的还有奉献者们的队伍，有大象，然后整个的这个很大的一支队伍。但是突然他们要上船想去过河的时候，来了一群坏人，冲着他们扔石头。
So the devotees tolerated all of these kind of treatment to establish the Krishna consciousness movement.
为了确立 Krishna 知觉运动，奉献者们忍受了所有的这一切麻烦和痛苦。
And then when they went to Vrindavan to do Brajamandal Parikrama, then when they came into Vrindavan, the shopkeepers, they closed their shops.
后来他们去文达文做这个 Brajamandal Parikrama， 那些开店的店主们把自己的店都关了。
They didn't want to sell anything to the devotees.
他们不想把任何东西卖给奉献者。
Because all the shopkeepers, they were all Brahmins, they were all caste Brahmins.
因为所有的这些店主们，他们都是 Brahmana， 尤其是等世袭的 Brahmana 们。
So they didn't like that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was giving the Brahmin thread to people who were not actually Brahmins by birth.
他们不喜欢 Bhaktisidanta Saraswati 把圣献授予那些没有出生在 Brahmana 家庭之中的人。
So they didn't want to even sell anything to the devotees.
于是他们甚至不想卖给奉献者们任何东西。
So these were some of the difficulties.
所以这就是他们的一些困难。
But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati pushed on. He fought to establish this Krishna consciousness movement.
但是 Bhaktisiddhanta 他非常努力的去战斗、去奋斗，来确立 Krishna 知觉的运动。
They had to face, of course, the opposition from the two groups. There were the Sahajas, those who take everything very cheap.
他要面临两个团队的反对，一个团队是 Sahaja 们，他们把所有的一切都当成是非常廉价的。
They think anybody can become a gopi, like they want to dress up in their material, although they're conditioned souls, they want to take the position of a gopi.
他们把自己打扮成 gopi 们的样子，然后他们就觉得只要把一个人给他穿上 gopi 的衣服，就可以让他变成 gopi 了。
And then there are also the caste Goswamis.
然后当然了，还有世袭的 Goswami 们。
They're thinking the birthright. Everything is based on birth. If you don't have the birth, then you have no right.
他们在考虑出生权，如果你没有生对的话，你就没有权利。
Just like there is also the Nityananda Vamsas.
就像是还有 Nityananda Vamsa，
And they claim that they are the acharyas of the Sampradaya because they claim descendancy from Lord Nityananda.
他们声称他们是整个这个传承的 Acharya 们，因为他们说自己是来自于 Nityananda 的后代。
Actually, Lord Nityananda, of course, he had two wives and he had two children. There was one boy, one girl.
实际上，主 Nityananda 有两个妻子，而且他有两个孩子，一个男孩，一个女孩。
One girl, Ganga Devi,
女孩是 Ganga Devi，
and the boy was Virabhadra.
这个儿子呢是 Virabhadra，
But Virabhadra never married.
但是 Virabhadra 从来没有结婚，
So there was no descendant from him.
所以从他那儿是没有后代的。
So who are the direct descendants from Lord Nityananda?
那谁是来自于主 Nityananda 的直接的后裔呢？
These people, they were just maybe they were disciples, maybe they were disciples or were from the village where Lord Nityananda lived.
可能只是他的门徒，或者是说在主 Nityananda 住的那个村子里的那些门徒们，
They were not actually actual descendants.
他们并不是实际的后裔。
But even if they are, they still, if they want to be acharya, they have to do the work of the acharya. They have to go and preach.
但即使他们是真正的后裔，他们想成为 Acharya 的话，他们应该做 Acharya 的事儿，他们应该去传播。
We're not opposing them. If they want to go and preach, let them go and do it.
我们并不反对他们，如果他们愿意去传播的话，那就让他们去吧。
But cannot just sit and say, we are the acharyas, we're from the line of Lord Nityananda, so we are the acharyas.
但是不能仅仅就坐在那儿说我们是 Acharya， 我们来自于主尼天丹的，我们是他的后代，我们就是 Acharya。
They have to establish themselves as acharyas by their preaching.
他们应该通过自己的传播来确立自己的 Acharya 的地位。
And similarly, from the line of Advaita Acharya had 6 sons.
同样道理，来自于 Advaita Acharya， 他有6个儿子。
Now 3 of the sons, they were asara, they were deviants, they became Mayavadi.
3个儿子是 Asara， 也就是他们偏离了，他们成为了 Mayavadi。
And from the other 3 sons, the best one was Achyutananda.
而另外的3个儿子最出色的一位是 Achyutananda，
But Achyutananda never married, he was a brahmachari.
而且 Achyutananda 从来没有结过婚，他一辈子是 Brahmachari，
So there was no real descendants from Advaita Acharya.
所以也没有来自于 Advaita Acharya 的后裔。
That's the arrangement of the Lord. He doesn't leave his descendants because he doesn't want them to become, he knows that they would just become proud.
这是主的安排，他没有留下自己的后裔，是因为这样的话，那些后裔就会变得非常骄傲。
So Srila Bhaktisidanta fought vigorously to establish this Krishna consciousness movement.
因此，Srila Bhaktisidanta 非常强有力的去跟他们争斗，然后确立这个运动。
And he was very strict with his devotees, with his disciples.
他对于奉献者、对于门徒是非常严格的。
He liked them to go out and preach and distribute books.
他想让他们出去传播派书，
And he was printing a daily newspaper.
而且他出版一份日报。
And if somebody could even sell one newspaper and collect a few paisa, he would be very happy and praise them. You have done very well.
如果有人能够卖出一份报纸，然后收上几拍撒那么多钱，他就会赞美他们，说你做得非常好。
And if somebody went out for preaching and they just came back with a big amount of money, he would say, oh, this is not very good. You must have just went to rich people. That's not good.
如果有人出去传播，然后回来的时候带了一大笔钱，他就说：“哦，这个不好，你一定是只跟那些富人去讲了，
You should go to everyone.
你应该去找每一个人。
And so if somebody came back and they had some money, and somebody else came and they brought some vegetables, and somebody else gave some rice, and somebody else gave some tomato, like that, you say, oh, very good, very nice.
于是大家回来的时候，有人带回来的是钱，有人拿回来一些蔬菜，有人拿回来一些大米，有的人拿回来一些西红柿。他说：“哦，非常好，非常好。”
And so he was very revolutionary. He did things which sannyasis, which people never did. He would do things like ride in a car. In those days, 100 years ago, it was riding in a car and going to see big people, government people.
他是非常有革命性的，他会做一些其他的萨尼亚西们、其他的人都不做的事情，比如说他会坐汽车，他会坐着汽车去见一些比较重要的人，比如说那些政府官员。
Usually the sannyasis, they would walk barefoot and they would go in the villages, but he would wear shoes and he would go to meet these big people. He'd wear sewn cloth. They're not supposed to wear sewn cloth. He would wear sewn cloth and he would wear shoes and he would go to meet these big people.
通常在那个年代，萨尼亚西们是赤着脚，然后去村子里的，但是他却穿着鞋，而且呢，当时萨尼亚西们也不会穿缝过的这个衣服，但是他会穿那样的衣服。
And he would bring them to Mayapur to see the holy town.
他把那些重要的人物带到了玛雅普，让他们去看水塘。
So we have so much to be thankful to Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati.
我们有非常多的方面要感谢Srila Bhaktisidanta Sarasvati。
And of course he gave the instruction to our Srila Prabhupada to preach and to go to the West.
当然了，他给了我们的Srila Prabhupada教导，让他去西方传播。
So we're so grateful for his mercy.
我们非常感激他的仁慈。
All right, so today we're going to give initiation,
今天我们要启迪，
right? Initiation
启迪
in the line of Srila Bhaktisidanta Saraswati, connecting devotees into the disciplic succession. Initiation is the process by which we become connected to the Guru Parampara.
我们是把大家连接到Srila Bhaktisidanta的这个传承之中，通过启迪的仪式，我们让奉献者跟Guru Parampara使徒传系连接在一起。
We get initiation, we're connected not just to one person, but to the whole line of disciplic succession.
通过启迪呢，不是说让你只跟一个人有关系，而是跟整个的使徒传承有关系。
And we are connected to all the ISKCON devotees.
而且我们跟所有伊斯康的奉献者们都息息相关。
Particularly the founder Acharya of ISKCON, our own Bhaktisidanta Swami Prabhupada.
而且尤其是我们伊斯康的创办人Acharya Bhaktisidanta Swami Prabhupada。
So initiation is an important part in spiritual life, accepting a spiritual master and following his instructions.
因此，启迪是灵性生活之中重要的一步。我们接受一位灵性导师，并且追随他的训示。
It's important for everyone. You should have, just like you have a mother and father. Everybody has a mother and father, right? You can't say I don't have a mother and father.
这对每一个人来讲都是非常重要的，就像是大家都有自己的父母一样，你不能说我没有父母。
But even more fortunate is the one who has a spiritual master.
但是更幸运的是一个有灵性导师的人。
Because by the mercy of the spiritual master, then you get shelter of Lord Krishna.
因为通过灵性导师的仁慈，你可以得到 Krishna 的庇护。
Everybody's got mother and father.
每一个人都有父亲和母亲。
Even the birds which are flying around here.
甚至是在这个地方飞来飞去的鸟儿们也有。
And the dogs.
还有狗。
Well, every living entity, they've all got mothers and fathers.
每一个生物体，他们都有父亲和母亲。
But only the fortunate ones have got a spiritual teacher.
但是只有那些非常幸运的人才能够得到灵性的老师。
By the mercy of the spiritual teacher, we get the mercy of Krishna.
通过灵性老师的仁慈，我们可以得到 Krishna 的仁慈。
So it's very important to get shelter of a spiritual master.
因此，得到灵性导师的庇护是非常重要的。
And so the Krishna consciousness movement encourages the devotees.
Krishna 知觉运动鼓励奉献者们。
And in order to take initiation, you have to also do the disciple course.
为了启迪，大家还需要学习门徒课程。
And you have to chant 16 rounds and follow 4 principles.
大家还应该唱诵16圈，追随4项规范原则。
So not very difficult.
不是很困难。
Especially if you're living here in Mayapur.
尤其是如果你住在马来普这里的话。
This is a very special place, very holy place.
这是一个很特殊的地方，非常神圣的地方。
Very wonderful to be here and to chant the holy name here in this place.
在这个地方是非常美妙的一件事情，我们可以在这里唱诵圣名。
Alright. So, we're going to do the fire yaga in a little while.
那么过一会儿之后，我们就会做火祭。
So some devotees are going to take part in the yagya. They never took part in the yagya before.
有一些奉献者会参与火祭，因为以前他们没有做过火祭。
But first we have to give beads for one devotee.
首先，我们要给一个奉献者念珠。
现在几点？
应该几点？现在12点半。
那个 prasadam 几点多啊？1
点半。
1点半。
对。
Okay. So Prabhu, this is Changyun. Dr. Changyun Prabhu is going to take initiation today.
今天张云昌帕布要启迪。
You also want to take initiation?
你也想启迪吗？
You want to take initiation? Okay, so Prabhu has been a resident in Mayapur for several years now. His son is going to school in the Mayapur International School.
卡波在马雅普已经住了几年了，而且他的儿子在马雅普这里呢上的是国际学校。
So he's enjoying the holy dham.
他非常喜欢神圣的Dham。
And he's becoming more and more devoted just by being here in the holy dham.
仅仅呢，在 Tom 这里呢，他就变得越来越有奉爱之情。
So his wife is already initiated.
他的妻子已经得到了启迪。
And his son is a wonderful kirtanier.
他的儿子是一个非常美妙的 kirtan 的歌手。
Plays very nice harmonium.
而且弹 harmonium 弹得很好。
Nice kirtan.
他唱出很好的 kirtan。
So Prabhu is also taking initiation today.
今天 Prabhu 也要接受启迪了。
So what are the 4 principles?
四项规范是什么？
就是一个蛋茶，这些起码就是不懂了，不过非常幸运，每天至少念诵10遍。
Okay. All right. So we give you a name. Jai Gauranga Das. Because this is the holy Dham of Mayapur, so you should have a name of Lord Chaitanya.
因为这个是水到玛普的圣地，所以你应该得到一个主宰他人的名字。
Jai Gauranga Prabhu Ki.
Jai!
Jai Gauranga. Okay, Hare Krishna. So we're going to do the fire sacrifice now.
现在要做火祭。
Shama Kripa Maharaj is also going to sit in the fire sacrifice.
香花kripa玛特吉也要参加火祭。
She didn't have the fire yet.
她还没有做火祭。
Chaitanya Charan also going to sit in the fire yagya.
也要参加火祭。
And Dopati.
And Draupadi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dopati.
And Draupadi also sit in the fire yagya. Okay.
再来一两份。多看几个和这个香瓜配方。这个是chanting the mantra。You want the brown sami? Or maybe you do the yagya and I chant
Okay, so we're going to do the fire yagya.
马克丽了，乐飞了，比你高兴。
你们也高兴啊！
很多人想让说你把家狗让给请回家去了。
他不花环，都
花环呢？
他把塞到里边去了。
拿去。
他能不能给他带？他要他妈的，他妈受不了。
没有照片。
你家里没有？那你就是这样。